The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalies podcast. I am Giles Farrell. Across the table from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
We are back in the studio this week. The long schedule layoff was not so kind on our audio equipment. I'm just kidding. But no, that is the subject of my grind the gears this week.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Is that after just 4 games, the Minnesota Wild had a 5-day layoff, and their last 2 games was preceded by a 4-day layoff. Your classic October, nobody plays. Well, the Minnesota Wild don't play in October. I guess it's good because they have so many injuries.
Yeah.
But, man, it felt like opening night on Friday.
Are you hitting something over there?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm hitting the table. Okay. Because I can't sit still.
I keep on hearing like a pinging.
No, I'll try to quit doing that.
I was going to say, not the audio coming again. No.
Yeah, we'd be really bad if that went to hell in here.
Yeah, no kidding. We can pull it off, I think.
We are cursed. That's our staple of this podcast.
But yeah, to your point, I almost wrote an article about it, but I don't know, I didn't get time for it this late last week, and I couldn't really put it into a form that I thought was good enough and long enough for an article. But yeah, it really sucks not having a lot of games for the Wild. But it really did come at the perfect time. It really could not have benefited the Wild more to have such a light schedule to start the season when they instantly lose their 4 best wingers. Like, you know, you can make an argument that Zucker's better than Parise at this point, and I'll listen to it for sure. But basically, essentially they're 4 best wingers. You know, there's really not. I mean, you can kind of split hairs, but when does that happen to a team? When does a team literally lose every winger out of its top 6? Or, you know, minus Zucker, and within the first 2-3 games of the season. And so it really did kind of work out in their favor, and we'll see how healthy the rest of the team can stay the rest of the season. But, yeah, brutally frustrating. I mean, I didn't mind it so much being in Phoenix, Arizona, where Fox Sports North is not a regular channel.
What? No,
yeah.
No.
But Fox Sports Arizona is, as you might imagine, very cookie-cutter similar to that.
Oh, the Coyotes are so bad.
Oh, man.
They're 0-7-1 to start the year.
Yeah, so I was at that game on Thursday, and, it was them and the Stars aren't really known for their defense, obviously.
No.
It just, I mean, it was just fire wagon hockey. It was fun to watch, but, man, I shouldn't say that. It wasn't. It was fire wagon hockey in that both teams were so sloppy they couldn't stop each other. It wasn't fire wagon hockey because of the amount of offensive talent out there, which there's plenty of offensive talent out there. I mean, you're talking Sagan and Ben. Clayton Keller is as good as everyone who fawned over him before that draft, like me. He's that good, and so that was fun to watch. But man, I've never seen 2 teams have more difficulty getting the puck out of their own zone with regularity than those 2 teams. And those goaltenders both, I mean, Ben Bishop and this Hill kid, he's a rookie. He's made his debut on Tuesday. They were just getting hung out to dry left and right.
And I forget which other Stars game it was this week, but
they played the Coyotes Tuesday and Thursday, so
maybe it was yesterday.
Okay.
But basically it sounded like classic Stars again yesterday. Fire wagon hockey.
Yeah.
So not surprising But
What's surprising to me is that Ben Bishop has a pretty decent save percentage to start the season for them. You would think him, he didn't have a great season last year. I think he's somewhere around 9-10, which is not good. And then this year he's, it's early and sample sizes are small, but he's off to a pretty good start, and he's basically the only thing holding that team's defensive core together.
all right, Dallas off to a pretty decent start. But anyway, we can dive more into random NHL thoughts later, but since we're a Minnesota Wild podcast, let's talk about the Minnesota Wild. And their previous week, as mentioned, a 5-day layoff from Sunday through Thursday was how we opened the week, during which we saw Zach Parise suffer a setback on Monday, bringing him out of practice just about 20 minutes in, and he hasn't been seen from since. And you can't tell, but Ben just eye-rolled so hard. I guess I can't say I'm surprised, but we did kind of hit on this on the Craig Custins podcast briefly, but did you have any lasting thoughts from this? Because nobody really seems to know how long he's going to be out.
Well, and they kind of are trying to shroud his injury in secrecy. Like it was his back's bothering him. He's not going to play in the preseason. Then the regular season rolls around. Oh, it's not his back though. What? What? I don't understand why they're. I mean, does he have the mumps? I don't what's going on here. It's weird.
Oh Lord,
it's weird. And then now, the fact they haven't long-term IR'd him now after this setback, how bad is this setback? He was skating, so obviously he was close, but is this setback, I don't know. I'm sure it's not like a torn ACL type setback, but it becomes much more confusing. When it's all said and done, he's going to miss at least 6 weeks, which in that case, the long-term IR would have come in handy. They could have brought in someone else. They could have signed someone, because Lord knows they need a little bit of. I mean, they're just absolutely raiding Iowa at this point of any player that has ever seen the NHL. So, I mean, it would have been nice to be able to bring in somebody who was cast off by another team right around the opening weekend, but. They didn't do that. I don't know if they just thought that he would be ready to go eventually, and then obviously this setback set him back that bad. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's frustrating when you look at his contract because you've got 8 more years.
Yeah, we still got plenty of years left.
And if it is his back, and I'm sure maybe they're trying to downplay that because they know how serious back injuries can be, and it's ended a lot of careers prematurely, and just it's a scary thing. And I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be tough to get anything out of him anytime before maybe New Year's. It seems like that's just going to be kind of the ebb and flow of preseason, is that he's just going to be perpetually a week away.
You really got to hope for that amnesty after the next lockout.
I'm banking on it already. I've already told a bunch of my friends about it.
There is going to be a lockout. Let's be honest here.
Let's be real.
Some hockey is going to get missed.
Uh-huh.
It's just a matter of how much of it. So hope that another amnesty is allowed out of that.
Just imagine if they don't miss any time. Could you imagine how much that would blow our ever-loving minds if they have a lockout that is done in July?
Because we expect the worst from the NHL, and then they miss no time. But because both sides are stubborn AF,
oh my God.
Time is going to be missed. I will put money on it.
Yeah, no, it sucks that you're absolutely right. But, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure out something else to podcast about during that time. Maybe we'll become a legal CBA podcast and just start dissecting the old
get
CBA.
Some lawyers on the show.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll call up some local.
We got some time to think this through.
We got time to plan.
And then the only other really newsworthy thing before the Wild finally got back out onto the ice was the Star Tribune hired a new Minnesota Wild beat writer,
They did.
Sarah McClellan of the Arizona Republic, I believe. Arizona something.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me.
I think it was the
but,
Republic.
I'm not sure when she's starting. She hasn't yet, because as soon as she announced that, I turned on Twitter notifications for her like I do with all the other Wild beat writers.
Yeah.
So I was pretty up to date on Arizona Coyotes news this week.
Yeah. Yeah, she was obviously at the game that I was at on Thursday, and I tweeted at her, hey, we're watching a game together, cool. And then I tweeted her, I asked her, I said, when do you start for the Strib? And she never answered. So, she's got a lot of followers. It's like asking Russo a question. You're only going to get an answer if you piss him off. So, or if he randomly catches your question and feels like answering it. I don't know when she's starting, but it seems like she's obviously been at this for a long time. She was with the paper that she was with, I believe, since 2007. So she's a seasoned vet. She's a pro, and also. I was watching Fox Sports Arizona in my hotel room after the game on Thursday, and they showed she interviewed. There was talking with Clayton Keller, and there was another beat writer. I don't know who he is, and you can tell it was her. Was the other one asking
Craig
the
Morgan?
Questions? I don't know who it might have been.
I think it probably was.
But
let's be honest. There's only 2 Coyotes beat writers.
Right, there's not more. It's not a complete huddle around it like in Minnesota. But I like the question she asked. She wasn't. First, she asked, because they scored a goal and then they immediately lit up 2 goals to the Stars. So she said, "What was it like, being out on that shift after allowing those goals?" So it was a good question about the mindset of the team, especially a team that was 0-5 at the time. It was trying to get some insight into how the team is feeling and if they have that here we go again. And then her other question was, they had a breakaway. Max Domi, sorry, had a breakaway. Had a breakaway like a minute before Clayton Keller scored on his breakaway, and so she asked him if he saw something in that breakaway that because he scored 5 goals. So if he saw something to make him, go a certain way with shooting on Bishop on the breakaway. So I thought they were really good questions. I'm looking forward to it. It's been kind of a weird amalgamation over at the Strib lately where you don't really know who's the beat writer because they've got about 4 or 5 different people
they got 4
covering
people
the Wild. So it'll be nice when that's a little more centralized. Obviously, Russo's still in town, so it's Russo's world and we're all just living in it. But,
there's your damn title.
But so it'll be nice when we have Russo, Dane, and then Sarah, and that'll just be kind of the go-tos as it were, instead of hunting around your Twitter feed for half an hour trying to find. Obviously Russo's on it, but trying to find the Strib writer.
Right. When Russo doesn't go to practice one day, you're without practice updates. Yeah. It'll be nice. So, that was really the only kind of news we had before the Wild played Friday night in Winnipeg. And, again, it had an opening night feel to it because it had been so long. Like you had forgotten the Minnesota Wild were actually playing hockey. And they pretty much on point as they've done this season. They blew a lead they had late, and then they lost 4-3 to the Jets. Patrick Laine had 2 goals. Nick Ehlers had a goal, which he was left alone out front of the net. Oh, there was a lot of things that went wrong in this game, and there were 2 big things that I took away from this game. One, obviously, as everyone else did, the Dumba-Brodin defensive pairing was atrocious.
Yeah.
Neither of them were good, let's be honest. And I was not impressed with Devan Dubnyk still. He didn't look overly sharp. Sure, some of the goals not on him, but still, I'm not impressed. And not a good game to let slip away.
Yeah.
Especially considering it's the Jets. You're in your own division, and you battled back to take a 3-2 lead after you fell behind 2-0, and then you let it slip away. And not a good performance by any stretch of the imagination.
No, that was as bad of a defensive performance as I think you'll see. And not so they didn't let up a big volume of shots. They only allowed 30 shots, so it wasn't like the Jets were coming fast and furious and never let off the gas pedal. The Wild did get their chances too. I mean, they scored obviously 3 goals. But yeah, to your point about Dubnyk, he wasn't overly sharp, but holy crap, did he get hung out to dry on at least the first 3 goals. I mean, that line A goal, he was in the classic, I guess, the reverse Ovechkin spot, and got just an absolute one-timer where there was no one close. And the second goal, the Ehlers goal, to your point, Dumba just absolutely abandoned Nicholas Ehlers directly on top of the crease. And I don't know. It's easy for us to defend Dumba, for being young and making mistakes, but like that's bad. That's bad. It was so bad.
We're not sugarcoating it here.
Right. It was so bad. It was just so confusing as to why he just he's standing next to Ehlers in front of the crease, like he's supposed to be. Brodin's battling in the corner, and suddenly the Jets player comes away with the puck and starts to skate behind the net, like he's going to go around the net, and Dumba just skates right at him. And I don't know. It's such fundamental hockey that he just gave up on there. And then there was the Koivu, the perfect deflection that went off of Koivu's stick. I'm not really gonna, fricassee Dubnyk for that one. But yeah, as you said, Dubnyk wasn't super sharp. I mean, he would have hoped that he could have made some miracle saves on those goals, even though he was very much hung out to dry. But he's off to a rough start. He's got like an .888 save percentage so far. Again, that's only been in 4 games now. So you're kind of having a little bit of fun with small sample sizes, and certainly the defensive play has been probably the most consistent thing this year. Consistently bad. Like they've gotten inconsistent goaltending, they've gotten inconsistent forward play, I feel like, but the defense has been on the same exact path they've been all season long, and that's, if you want to find something to worry about this team in 6 games, which isn't a big sample, the defense is where you're going to look.
Let's switch the defensive pairings, assuming that Mr. Suter is fine with that. But
yeah, I don't know. So, it seemed like they were a little bit last night. It seemed like I want to say I heard Dumba's name called with Suter just a handful of times. I don't know if Bruce is trying to get a good look at it, or if he's just trying his damnedest to break up Suter or Brodin and Dumba any way he can, which is also kind of explainable. Or if he's just trying to get Kyle Quincy off the ice, which is also kind of explainable. So I don't know. We'll see if there's any changes made to that before Tuesday's game.
So this was kind of debated on the Hockey PDO cast this last week because they were talking about top 10 goalies.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of became a thought in my head after watching the Winnipeg game on Friday night. But do you consider Devan Dubnyk to be a top 10 goalie in the NHL?
I think so. But I will, with the caveat that I wouldn't say barely, but not by a ton. I mean, I think he's pretty solidly in that 6 to 10 range.
Probably closer to the 10 spot.
I mean, I think he's in the middle somewhere. And last year, his stats across the board were top 10. I mean, he was like 7th in save percentage, or tied for 6th or 7th. He was like 2nd in wins, which who really cares? And goals allowed average, he was also like 6th or 7th in. And just on how inconsistent he's been, I'd like to bump him out of the top 10. But then you think about the times where he's good. I mean, the months that he's really good, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, he's a top 10 goaltender. So I think in the months where he's good, he looks like a top 5 goaltender. I mean, he looks like the elite of the NHL. So I think you kind of, as inconsistent as he is, you kind of have to add them both together and say that, even with the inconsistencies, he's going to be a middle to end of the top 10 kind of guy. You're certainly not going to take him over. I don't know. I mean, I think it's easy to come up with 5 goalies you'd rather have than him. But then if you try to think of 5 more, it gets kind of dicey. Do you really want Pekka Rinne over him? He's kind of the same goalie. I mean, he's huge. He's wildly inconsistent, An aging Henrik Lundqvist certainly is a good goalie, but is he better than Dubnyk at this stage in his career? I don't know that he is. Corey Crawford, another guy who is kind of, he's pretty good, but is he a top 5 guy? Is he a top 10 guy? It's kind of on par with Dubnyk. Matt Murray even, pretty young, similar stats to Dubnyk last season. I don't know. I feel like there's 5 goalies where you would say, yeah, I'd take him over Dubnyk. And then after that, it gets a little bit more comparable.
Right. So I wrote an article at the beginning of the year, or actually in the preseason, on Zone Coverage about the value the Wild were getting out of Devan Dubnyk's contract.
Right.
And, you run the numbers on his stats during that contract, and he ranks, high up there in the NHL, and especially considering what he's being paid, and then you look at other goalies who are being paid way more and are doing way less. You go, well, yeah, he's definitely got to be in there. Right. And just for the sake of throwing out stats, here are his stats since the start of the 2014-15 season, which he had that half season with Arizona, but this has majority been with the Wild. In the save percentage category, he is tied for 4th among goalies with at least 100 games.
Yeah.
With John Gibson Anaheim at 922. Only Price, Holtby, and Crawford are ahead of him.
Right.
Goals against average, he is tied for 4th with Ben Bishop, John Gibson at 226.
Yeah.
Behind Holtby, Price, and John Quick out of nowhere. And then the 5-on-5 save percentage, he is 3rd in that time behind Price and Holtby at 932, which is very good. So you're basically, his stats are saying, he's been upper echelon in the league since he's been acquired.
Right.
It was just interesting that, they kind of debated Dubnyk on the Hockey PDOcast being in the top 10, and I think he was ranked on that show at number 10.
Okay.
But I just found it interesting, and as I said also at the beginning of the year, he is one to have slow starts. We were very spoiled last year with his hot start, which carried the Wild through October until they finally found their legs. Moving on, the Wild, because the schedule makes absolutely no sense, we're back at it Saturday night in Calgary against the Flames and one Mr. Jágr.
Yes.
Who left the game with an injury. I had the sads. More ways than one, because 1, we were deprived of watching Jágr. 2, that means I lost a bet.
Yes.
Congratulations, you finally got on the board.
Hey, I'll take all the charity you'll give me.
And maybe next week I'll pay out on that bet on the air. But because we're in studio this week, we can't do that.
Yeah, it is a little bit surprising to me they don't have like one of those YEG dispensing machines here, because we are we're at the hip hop station, but there are 2 rock stations next door, like down the hallway. So.
Well, maybe there is one in one of those fridges. We could go take a look.
There probably is. There's got to be a lot of booze in this building, I would assume.
Yeah, somewhere. I haven't sniffed it out yet.
I was going to say, has your radar beeped yet?
The Wild back in Calgary, and an absolutely exhausted-looking team, playing a back-to-back after 5 days off early in the season. Somehow they snuck out a win after they fell behind early, but they were able to battle back and get some key goals from Chris Rocket Richard Stewart. Ryan Suter got a goal off a wrister that made Wild Twitter burn down. And then Winnick had the empty net goal. I can't remember who had the third. Spurgeon.
Spurge fired an absolute rocket from the face-off circle.
Just a howitzer.
Yeah.
And that made Wild Twitter go from 6 to midnight.
Yeah, very much did.
Yeah. But I was thoroughly impressed, as I said on Twitter. I don't know how the Wild are winning this game, but this was a game in which the Wild could have been down by a lot more instead of 2-1 at the beginning of the third.
Yeah.
But Alex Stalock, who started the game, absolutely was robbing goals left and right, 2 of which off the stick of Jágr before he left the game.
Right.
And basically played himself into a discussion to start at least a game this week.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's, when your team is struggling like this and you're fighting injuries, I think you're going to be more apt to go with the hot hand with goaltending. And right now, it's only been 2 games. Let's not anoint Alex Stalock the Vezina winner just yet. But
Oh, God. This podcast would have to eat a lot of crow.
I know. We'd be writing apology letters to every UMD fan in the Twin Cities. But, I think he's earned, definitely a start on Tuesday or Thursday. You certainly don't want to ride him, into the ground at this point because you still have to give Dubnyk some time and Dubnyk some reps, and I think that'll help Dubnyk get to where Dubnyk needs to be. Obviously, he's off to a slow start, but only playing 4 games in 3 weeks now. Of course he is. It's gonna. That's how slow starts happen. So, but no, Stalock was phenomenal. I mean, I turned the game on just a minute or 2 in, and he was just all over the place. I mean, there was a stretch in the beginning, about 3 minutes in or so, where he looked like Dominik Hasek. He was flopping around so violently, but he had to because the defense had just kind of eroded in front of him to the point where that's what he had to do. And he ends up making 34 saves on the night, 35 saves on the night. And I mean, just an incredible performance. Really held this team above water long enough for them to get some opportune, some good, well-timed goals out of the pairing of Suter and Spurgeon. So
I didn't have, really any, big questions out of this game except, should Stalock get a start next week? And I think we obviously agree.
I think
yes.
So, yeah.
And, if not Tuesday, Definitely, Thursday or Saturday or something.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the other question I had written down just from this week in general was, should we send Dumba to the gulag?
He had some rough moments again tonight or last night, but I really want to see him with Suter. And I don't think that cures everything. I don't think that makes him less of a high-risk, high-reward type player. I just think that's who he is. If you look at Brent Burns, that's kind of his style too. Erik Karlsson, maybe less so, but still kind of along that line. I mean, you don't have very many defenders like that can play that kind of style and contribute that much on offense. And I would like to see him with Suter before you do anything else with him, as far as demote him to the third line or, along with drastically reducing his minutes or anything like that. Healthy scratch him. I don't think we need to healthy scratch Dumba just yet. I would rather see him with Suter and just see how it goes. I mean, I know Suter probably isn't a huge fan of it. I would love playing with Jared Spurgeon too if I were him. But, for the better of the overall team. And I also think that Spurgeon can help Brodin because Brodin is certainly scuffling too. And maybe some of that you could put the onus on Dumba, him having to carry Dumba a little bit, but I'm not super impressed with Brodin's defensive play, and that's supposed to be his forte.
No.
So it's like, you kind of have to help out both guys, and how you do that, you put him with 2 of the best defensemen maybe in the league. I mean, not top 10 or anything, but 2 very, very good top pair defensemen, split them up and see how it goes.
You mentioned Brodin's defensive play and how not good it's been.
Yeah.
I'm just have this video seared in my head of Blake Wheeler just blowing by Jonas Brodin on Friday night, which resulted in a goal. I can't remember if it was Wheeler or somebody cleaned up the rebound.
Was it Laine?
Maybe that was Laine's second goal. But either way, Jonas Brodin just got absolutely blown by, which very uncharacteristic. And that's a perfect summary of how he's played to begin the year. But anyway, so that was the week in review. And now we get to review or preview the week ahead.
Blake Wheeler did score.
That was Wheeler's goal?
Yeah, he did get the goal.
Okay.
That was the game winner.
Oof.
Yup.
So anyway, previewing the week ahead, the Wild have 3 games. Wow.
What?
This week. I know. They actually got a game between Monday and Thursday. They have 2 between Monday and Thursday.
Wow.
You may need to be sitting down when you hear that. they start a 6-game homestand, their longest of the season, on Tuesday night against the Vancouver Canucks and our old pal, Tom Vanek.
What? Tom's in town.
3 goals for Mr. Tom to start the year.
How can he do that if he can't skate?
Yeah,
Don't you hate pants?
He's just cherry picking in the.
He just coasts around with.
Yeah.
He plays.
He's just standing on the offensive blue line the whole time.
He's like one of those NBA centers that just stands besides the hoop and just waits for the ball to come to him and just put back everything.
Yep, just like pickup basketball.
Yeah, exactly. He's like.
Vancouver, kind of off to a decent start, 3-1, not last in the Pacific because the Coyotes and I forget who else, but basically Vancouver doesn't have to worry about being last for a while in that division.
Yeah, they're fine.
Edmonton is below Vancouver in the standings.
What?
Yikes. Not a good start for the Oilers. Who would have thought?
And San Jose as well.
And then Thursday night, the New York Islanders come to town. And the big question is, will this be the last time John Tavares visits St. Paul as a member of the Islanders?
Put money on it.
And then Saturday night, the Stanley Cup champion Penguins visit XL Energy Center, which will no doubt be a big game.
Yeah, suddenly thousands of Penguin fans will come out of the woodwork from their Edina, Woodbury, Wayzata homes. All of them from ages, probably 23 to 28, somewhere in that range.
Damn millennials.
I know. So yeah, always a good time though. I've been to a handful of Penguins games. I really enjoy watching the Penguins, as has been noted on the show. I'm a little bit of a closet Penguins fan. I respect what they can do, and yeah, it's a fun game to watch. It's always a good time to watch Sidney Crosby play hockey, despite what you think about his disposition.
No, Penguins games are fun. I highly encourage you to get to one if you can. Obviously, they always seemingly are here on a Saturday night, so tickets are way more expensive than your typical weeknight. But
I went to a weeknight Penguins game once, and this is a story I remember because this is how much the Penguins have the balls of NBCSN, which actually, might have been Versus still at the time. So I got tickets to a Penguins game. I'm like, I want to see Sidney Crosby. I want to see this team play. And we go to our usual spot where we take a shuttle, and there's like nobody there. And we get there at like 6, and there's no one there. And I'm like, what the hell? And so then I check my phone. Yeah, puck drop was at 6 on a Tuesday.
That's usually only during the playoffs now.
Well, and not even then. It's an 8:30 game.
Or if the Montreal Canadiens come down, then they have to be put to 6 for hockey night in Canada.
Well, yeah, but and it was just so weird. It was a weekday game, wild game that started at 6 o'clock local time. And me not being, this was years upon years ago. I didn't follow the team quite as closely as I do now, obviously. But I was just, oh man, I remember just being livid. I missed the whole first period.
And I noted in my This Week in Hockey on Zone Coverage that the Wild swept the season series by the Penguins last year, and they outscored them 10-4 in those 2 games, which great at the time, but then in June you forgot that ever happened.
Well, and obviously they didn't play him in the month of March either, so.
Right. So that's the week coming up. Hopefully it should be, well, it will be good because there's actual hockey games played between Monday and Thursday.
Right.
And you're not just stuck at home watching, other NHL games or playoff baseball or, what have you.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, I love playoff baseball.
Especially when the Yankees lose. How did that go in your world this week, Giles?
Well, fortunately, was out celebrating the girlfriend's birthday last night, so we didn't get to see a whole lot of that.
Terrible birthday present for that Yankees fan.
Yeah. So, but it still was a disappointment. It was labeled a terrible rebuilding year.
Okay.
Yeah. Think about that.
By who?
Her.
Oh. Okay.
I was arguing this today. I was like, it's a terrible rebuilding year, and you went to the ALCS.
To Game 7 in the ALCS, no less. Oh, that's...
The mentality.
Did you see that tweet of that guy? Finally, us long-suffering Yankee fans, we put up with 6 years of embarrassment.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, God, that tweet was amazing. People are like, this is why you're insufferable. This is why everyone hates Yankee fans.
She's not that bad, though.
No, she doesn't seem that bad.
She gets it, because I've actually explained to her what life as a Twins fan is like. And sitting through the last 6 years of 100 losses is... Yeah. So there's been some perspective there.
And the bright side is you can actually afford tickets to a Twins game, unlike the Yankees.
Right. Not that I've tried. I went to the old Yankee Stadium in the last year, and that was kind of it for me.
Yeah.
I not dying to go to the new place. Like, obviously, I would love to go back to New York City, but the new Yankee Stadium, whatever.
Right.
Anyway, back to hockey and on to our Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week.
Ah, yes.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
And because it was another long week off, we, not a whole lot of media time with the head coach, but he did give us a gem early on in the week. It was in Michael Russo's piece on The Athletic on Monday after practice, I believe. And Bruce Boudreau was, I forget what he was asked about. But basically, the quote was, "We have, for want of a better term, pissed away 4 points so far." And that's obviously referencing, what was it, the Columbus game, which they blew a lead in the third and lost in overtime.
Well, they've blown a lead in every game.
And then the Carolina game, if I'm not mistaken, which
Russo
they lost
noted
in the shootout.
Last night they've been tied, after Friday night, they've been tied or leading in the third period of every game so far.
Which, good, but also not good considering the record. So, that is... that was your good quote, and that is your Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to how frustrating it is. I mean, I think even he realizes that it's going to be tough to get wins right now. I mean, like I said, your top 4 wingers are hurt. But it still has to be frustrating when your team is still playing well enough to win every game you've been in. Like, they haven't been blown out yet. There hasn't been a game where it's just like, man, this team doesn't look like they even belong on the ice.
Right.
Which you would kind of expect out of a team missing its top 4 wings.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of like almost like a preseason lineup that they're throwing out there on forward.
And also the Iowa guys have actually played, decently considering the situation. And
right. Luke Cunnin last night getting some points, kind of showing some hustle and looked pretty impressive. So it's been good. And Landon Ferraro looked good until he got hurt. He looked like he was a guy that, could maybe spend some time in your fourth line. You wouldn't mind it entirely. But then obviously he was hurt on Friday night, which caused them to call up Cale O'Reilly for last night's game.
I haven't checked in on Iowa and how they've been doing, but can't be too pretty down there with
they've just been
all the guys who have, been called up. And, well, here I have it in front of me. In 6 games, Iowa has won 2 of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
2-4-0, and just quick glancing at some stats.
I can't even imagine who they're plugging in when we're stealing. The Wild are stealing players.
Well, at least
like
they're
Cale
stealing
O'Reilly
forwards. At least defensively and in goal, they still have a chance. But Nicholas Svedberg not off to a good start. Played all 6 games. His save percentage is .895.
Ooh, yeah, that's a little rough.
Colton Beck is your leading scorer on the Iowa Wild with 4 goals and 2 assists.
I don't know that we'll see him in St. Paul anytime soon, but
noted Eden Prairie Eagle Kyle Rao had a pretty nice goal last night. He had quite the snipe.
I believe he scored on Friday night too.
Or maybe it was Friday night.
Oh.
I'm getting nights mixed up.
That's okay.
But-
Yeah.
So there you go. There's your small Iowa Wild update. All right. Our weekly wager, which we have.
We're already going to that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Might as well get it out of the way.
Okay.
So last week we obviously bet on Jágr scoring a goal Saturday night against the Wild, and he did not. Alex Stalock made a couple of saves on him, and then he left the game hurt.
Sure.
So Ben gets into the win column.
Woo.
So as tweeted from the Giles and the Goalie podcast Twitter account, I have 2, you have 1, and we still have just the one bet at large, which we won't know till April. And as I also said, I could win every single weekly bet and then lose that big bet, and the season would be considered a failure.
It's kind of like the playoffs.
Yeah.
Ironically enough.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, this week, what do you kind of feel? What's your feeling on this week? What's something that we can differ on here? What's your hot button topic?
I guess maybe we'll just bet on how many wins the Wild get this week.
Ooh.
That would be my proposal. As they play Vancouver, the Islanders, and Pittsburgh, and I see the first 2 games in there as winnable. Vancouver as in a rebuild, and the Islanders. I just nothing about that team really excites me outside of John Tavares, and I think you gotta win those games, and then you have Pittsburgh at the end of the week, and the Wild always seemingly get up to play Pittsburgh.
Wow,
and they should be all right there.
Okay,
but,
so are you saying?
So I'm gonna say, because it's somewhere in here, they're gonna let one slip away.
Sure.
So I'm gonna say they win 2 games this week.
Wow,
that's optimistic.
It is. I'll take 1. I think they go 1-1-1 this week, just for the sake of the sake of consistency, because they're 2-2-2. I'll go with that. You go with 2 wins, I'll go with 1. And if they win 3 games somehow,
or win 0.
Well, we can go over 1.5 wins for you. How's that?
All right.
Yeah.
And then you take the under.
I'll take the under. Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. Don't like being pessimistic, but like I said, I think they're still kind of scuffling a little bit, and we'll see how many starts Stalock gets, because he's playing well and Dubnyk isn't. But who knows? I like that. It's a good one.
What are we wagering?
Oh, damn. Oh, I know. We'll have the other read a written statement the following week.
All right.
A written statement of defeat.
Interesting. I'm for this.
I thought about this for last week, and we went up with the Jágr bomb, which made way more sense. So,
and I don't know why last week I didn't say Jágr, because if you go back into like 90, 91, when Jágr comes into the league,
yeah,
all the announcers call him Jágr.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Wonder why that is. Did Doc Emmerich end up correcting them? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Groundland?
I think it was Gary Thorne saying Jágr.
Huh.
Back in the day.
It's Gary Thorne. He gets away with whatever he wants.
So, all right. On to jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
The team of the week this week, and if you're still just tuning into this segment, is we are imagining now what a third jersey next year for this team would look like. So we have one team every week, and we try to pick out a team that the Wild are playing in the upcoming week. So we kind of had some different options this week, but we went with the Pittsburgh Penguins this week. I am going to open the floor to you on what you would think out of this.
Well, and you might be on the same How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow? Same wavelength as me on this. I kind of, being a child of the 90s, I kind of want to see them bring back something 90s-ish. I don't know if you call that the Robo Penguin. Maybe that. I kind of like those jerseys. The Mario Lemieux era, the 92 to 97 era, or also the Pittsburgh diagonally down the jerseys. It would be a lot of fun to see this team wearing a jersey like that. Just obviously, occasionally being a third jersey, to wear that black Pittsburgh down diagonally, just like Mario wore for essentially the prime of his career. Up and down with injury and all that. But I don't know. I would really enjoy that. I think that would be a good look, and kind of a nice throwback. I mean, I don't think they need to change it much. I think if they just go with that jersey almost just replicated with Adidas, hopefully hold the silly collar. I think that would be really awesome if they could bring those jerseys back. As I think it's been 20 years. Why not do a throwback like that?
Yeah, I mean, as always, I am for teams going back with throwbacks.
Right.
But yeah, for one, I don't see it. I
don't think it'll happen either, but that's what I would like to see.
I think maybe they'll do something along the lines of their Stadium Series jersey from last year, where it's just primarily yellow.
Yeah.
Dipping back into that.
I don't know.
That's not what I would like to see, but that's what I think we might see. And I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh just doesn't go with an alternate.
I kind of would, because they've always had a third jersey, more or less. I mean, when they've been allowed to have one, basically.
Right. I don't know. Maybe they would wait a few years before they had one, but
that could be it too. I mean, they have plenty of options. Is the thing.
Right. I would be interested to see with what they do next, because I feel like they've dipped into the throwbacks enough, so they might just come up with something totally new and just throw us all off. Because they have gone through all their throwbacks because they play in an outdoor game
every season,
just about every year. So
yeah, what I don't like necessarily from them is them going back to the blue. I'm not wild about the blue with them. I don't know. I realize that was their original color, and that was but it's been. I mean, they haven't worn blue since 1980, so I don't know that. I know they use them as a third jersey periodically for a couple of years, and they've obviously used them in a couple of their Stadium Series jerseys. I'm just not a huge fan of it.
I like the first blue jersey they brought back, the original Winter Classic jersey.
Yeah, the baby blue.
That I liked. I didn't like that second blue jersey they went with. But, yeah I'm kind of with you. Maybe just stay away from the blue.
Yep.
All right. That can do it for jerseys. Last thing on our list is our mailbag from last week, because we missed that.
Yeah.
So I am going to try and get through the questions here, because I'm going to try and at least ask the still relevant questions that we can.
I think they're all still relevant because it's all sample size
One
stuff.
or two might have been like specific to last week, but whatever. We can try and do what we can with this.
Sure.
So just making sure I'm reading our Facebook questions from last week. From our friend Gretchen, which of the Iowa guys impressed you? Who would you like to see called up? Well,
I think Kunnin is.
Kunnin obviously is.
One.
Yeah. I mean, I've had no problems with any of them.
No, and like I said, Landon Ferraro looked like he was playing pretty well until he got hurt. I think on a breakaway on Friday night. So I think he's earned a spot. To your point, I haven't seen any of the Iowa guys been like, woof.
Right.
That guy needs to go back to Des Moines tomorrow.
And the thing of it is outside of Zach Mitchell, like Ferraro, O'Reilly, these are guys that were just signed this summer.
Yeah.
And Chuck Fletcher signed him and said, we needed depth in Iowa. And, because I think he signed like 6 players on July 1st to two-way deals essentially to put him in Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's kind of something you forgot about. And you're like, well, if he hadn't done that, we'd be really screwed.
Oh, my God. I mean, nothing against Mario Lucia or Sam Annis, but, I mean, I just think that, you've got guys with NHL experience that they're able to call up, and that's huge. It's nice not to be debuting 3 different players in the same game out of necessity, Yeah, no, I think those moves were very underrated. We talked about it at the time. We joked at the time that the Iowa Wild actually won free agency this year. It wasn't, an NHL team. And, Chuck Fletcher, certainly for a lot of criticisms that he's due for his dealings this summer, that isn't one of them. And I think he did a great job of stocking Iowa this summer. And that was because it was obviously a priority. And I think he realized just the same that we did, that they got really lucky with injuries last year. And if injuries were to hit this year, he needs to have a better talent pool to draw from, and lo and behold, 3 games into the season, that's what we're dealing with.
Obviously, the some of the other offseason moves are obviously fair game to be criticized and
for sure.
Well deserved, as somebody out in Buffalo is just lighting it up. But no, I credit to where credit's due on signing all these guys for Iowa, and now obviously having them early on in the year as the Wild just depleted by injuries.
Yeah.
Switching over to our Twitter from Tom Jack. Didn't ask, but comment on Wild get and give a goal seconds apart. Years of this crap. Why? And this is referencing in the Columbus game when the Wild got out ahead, and then seconds later they gave up the lead. Honestly, yeah, I'm with you. It's always like that seemingly, and at some point you'd like to think it would stop, but we're approaching, almost 20 years of the Minnesota Wild, and it's still a thing. So who knows if it'll ever go away.
And I mentioned this last year in the part that was cut. It feels like that wasn't as big of an issue last season. Certainly has been ingrained in the personality of this team for quite some time, and I think it's a PTSD type thing for a lot of Wild fans, which I totally understand. But it feels like last season that wasn't as big of an issue, and obviously we saw it again in the Columbus game. But kind of to my point, we didn't see it this weekend. They kind of had to come back a little bit, but they didn't allow goals within a minute after getting one this weekend in the 2 games they played. So I think every team does that. I was at the Coyotes game on Thursday, and they scored a goal and then immediately let up 2 goals within a minute and like a half to the Stars. So it's not, this isn't a Wild standalone trait. But you just kind of hope to minimize that. But I think I think this is kind of a natural thing. I think as soon as you score a goal, you kind of maybe you ease up a little bit subconsciously on playing defensively, or maybe you taste a goal and you want more, and so you play a little more risky of an offensive game, and so those kind of things happen. There's very good reasons for all those kinds of things to happen.
From WSP, did Foligno's fight precipitate from him checking Brent Seabrook over the boards? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
It definitely did.
As we've seen him now in full face mask and black eye and all.
Yeah, I think Foligno came in, obviously. I don't think a lot of us are huge fans of his right off the bat just because of that trade, which isn't his fault at all. But if there's one way to endear yourself to a fan base, it's to put Brent Seabrook ass over tea kettle into his own bench, which was a lot of fun to watch. But definitely he got they picked him out for a fight after that, definitely because of that reason. So unfortunate that he broke his face, but he only missed 1 game. So at the end of the day, the Wild's crappy start of the season schedule kind of saves them a little bit from missing even more man games than they would have otherwise.
Somebody tweeted at us this week on our Twitter account if we were officially in swoon season.
No.
To which you gave the reply, but we're not quite there yet.
No. They're 2-2-2. If you want to call that a swoon, like my
right.
Lord, that's.
Well, I think it came right in after the Winnipeg game, so there was a little more doom and gloom. But the win in Calgary, I think, kind of put everyone on stand down.
Right, and this is why you don't overreact to stuff like that. This is why you don't freak out when they've lost a couple of games, because especially with this schedule, like they were playing so infrequently that like you can't, yeah, they're losing a majority of their games right now, but they've played so little. It's just like, there's no reason to get too upset about that.
And then last one was from Dan Peterson. He tweeted at both of us. It was after the Winnipeg game again. You have to bring up Suter and Spurgeon's horrible play, responsible for 1 or 2 opponent goals a game. Well, truth be told, I'm not totally, big on our defense to start the year.
Right.
Really anyone.
Yep.
And, Suter and Spurgeon, included. I think very highly of Jared Spurgeon.
Right.
Obviously, room for improvement everywhere.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, the defense across the board has been pretty bad. But I think that's something that they can correct. I feel like I don't think anything changed with Scott Stevens leaving and Bob Woods coming in. I don't think that's like any kind of adjustment. But who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe Woods wants to see the defenseman do something differently, and that just that little adjustment, even within the same system, from one coach to another, is causing guys to second guess themselves and to play slightly different games, because we've seen some pretty uncharacteristic mistakes. Just last night, Spurgeon left a guy wide open in front of the net who ended up scoring, and we just don't see mistakes out of that out of Jared Spurgeon very often.
Right.
There's a lot of instances where they're not lifting sticks, that kind of thing. And maybe the slashing, enforcement has changed things slightly, which is kind of what the NHL wanted. And we're seeing probably more goals in wild games than we're accustomed to, because, I think defenses are kind of changing the way they play a little bit, because as soon as you touch someone with your stick, it seems to be a penalty now. So, there's a lot of reasons for it. I guess we'll just, I think right now we're still having fun with small sample sizes, so I just wait and see.
So that is our mailbag for this week / last week.
What about series matchups, double-barreled?
Oh, yes.
He asked us
Are
on
the
Facebook.
inmates running the asylum.
And Twitter. So.
My bad.
No. To that point, I believe I said this last week, which again was lost. They kind of always are, and that's kind of coaching in professional sports, is you've got millionaires playing for you who know a lot about the game, and I think Ryan Suter knows a lot about the game, and I'm sure this is what series matchup is getting at. So, part of coaching in professional sports is keeping your players happy, and at the same time, there's probably a little bit of Boudreau who wants to have Suter and Spurgeon together, because that's a defensive pairing that you can rely on. Like we talked about, the defense isn't playing great right now, but maybe they're the best pair that he has, and I think that's accurate. So I don't know. It just seems like it's not necessarily as easy as he's just letting them run willy-nilly and kind of writing their own lineup cards, as so to speak. I don't know if that's the case. What are your thoughts on that? I shouldn't have thrown it to you then, is what you're saying.
I just get whatever. Like, there's weirdly a lot of Suter dislike out there now, and
yeah,
I mean, some of it is deserved, but I don't know. I think maybe it's a little overblown, but
yeah,
the not wanting to switch D partners is always driving me up a tree. So I don't know. Well, maybe that'll be my grind my gears next week.
and I think, I don't know. I think that it might be a little overblown, and people have always kind of, not always, but it's been low key how people kind of like to ride Suter, because he makes a lot of money, and he doesn't necessarily get a lot of results that are tangible. He plays good defense, but he's not a guy that's going to score a ton, and he's, it's frustrating sometimes to see him throw those wrist shots towards the net on the power play. But, I don't think that you need to, pick out one tree in the forest and just, point out how bad that is. And that's kind of what people do with Suter.
All right. That can probably wrap it up for us this week.
Sure.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I feel like the Calgary win has kind of made us feel a lot better about where this team is at. Maybe got this team off the schneid just a little bit. I think this week will be pretty telling as far as where this team is at mentally and where this team is at physically. I mean, we might see Mikael Granlund return this week. There was a distinct possibility he could have played on Friday or Saturday, but it didn't happen. So, I don't know. I'd be interested to see if he comes back this week. That go a long way towards getting this team back on the straight and narrow. Same thing with Nino. I don't know that he's super close to being back. I don't think he's skating yet, but if we hear about him skating this week, which is maybe possible, we'll see. So I don't know. It's nice to get on a regular schedule again, where they've got the typical Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday deal going on. I think it'll go a long way towards kind of showing us what this team is. And really, for the zillionth time this episode, this team lost its best 4 wingers. And, the fact that they're essentially 500, they're 2-2-2. I realize that's 4 losses, but you get points for the overtime losses. So, they've got points in 4 of 6 games. They've only lost 2 games in regulation. I just, I'm optimistic about how well this team has played, given what they're dealing with. I think that the defense has been bad, but also they're missing a little bit of defense from the forward end too. I mean, we know how good Nino is defensively, and certainly Granlund, Coyle, even Parise pull their weight defensively as well. And so I think that's not something to be underrated. So interested to see how the goaltending shakes out. I think Dubnyk maybe starts to take off of the ground a little bit, and Stalock is obviously playing pretty well right now, relatively speaking. So I think this week is pretty big for seeing where this team is at, despite all the injuries.
My final thought is college hockey related. Minnesota played North Dakota this weekend.
Is that the Fighting Hawks?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't tell their fans that. And it was not televised outside of the Grand Forks area because of the local rights, which it was the same for the Gophers last year when it was here. Couldn't see it really outside of the Twin Cities. And, that I get it. That's fair. That's how it's written up. But you are doing a terrible disservice to the sport by not getting that out there. I think somebody threw it out like, how does NHL Network not pick this up?
How does a local network not pick this up?
Right, and yikes.
Yeah.
There was a split between the Gophers and UND this weekend, and check out Nate Wells's game recaps on Zone Coverage for what all went down. But I'm disappointed about it. Angry, yes, but also it's the NCAA, and I expect this garbage from them at this point. And nothing really, especially with college hockey, nothing's ever really going to change because that has to come from the NCAA higher-ups who could give, 2 hoots about hockey.
Unless it's Barry Alvarez's idea.
Right.
And then changes happen overnight.
So I didn't get angry about it on Twitter this weekend because it's what's the point? Nothing's going to change.
True.
That's how defeated I am with this. So that's my final thought. Thank you to everyone for following along with us this week and here to start the season. You can find Ben and I on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. Find our podcast on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. You can download our show via Libsyn, Stitcher, iTunes. Give us an iTunes rating if you are so inclined. We are an otherwise fine podcast. You could find Ben and I writing at zonecoverage.com. I will be back in action this week, I promise. Did I miss anything? I think I got it all.
That's it. I think we're good.
Yeah. So we will be back with you next week, and we'll talk to you later.
Later.
That's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.